So welcome, everyone. I'm Maggie McAlpine, as I mentioned, the Director of Cybersecurity Partnerships and Evangelism at Seceon. Over the next few minutes, about 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the global threat landscape for 2025, the threats that are rising, the regions that are being hit hardest, and some blind spots putting organizations at risk. Following that, I'll be handing off the microphone to my colleague, Smith Kadakia, who will walk us through how Seceon specifically is addressing these challenges with unified automated security. But first, let's understand the threat landscapes. Okay, we were about 30 minutes behind. I just realized my microphone's not on my. So to quickly introduce myself. Great. Okay. I'm Maggie McAlpine. I joined Seceon in 2024, as I mentioned, as the Director of Cybersecurity Partnerships and Evangelism. Prior to this, I've worked with organizations like MITRE, Cybereason. I worked with the DEF CON Voting Village. I've also had the opportunity to present on cyber threats at a range of venues, including Capitol Hill, ShmooCon, PACSec Tokyo. I'm thrilled to be with you here today. So as our agenda, we'll be going and looking at first, the global trends, top emerging threats. We want to talk about the big picture at the beginning, the explosion in threat volume and the rise of targeted attacks like ransomware, phishing, credential theft. We'll be talking about what's happening around the world, including in India, North America, Africa, Latin America, and why that local context matters. From there, we'll shift to the challenges and defenders are facing, like alert fatigue, burnout, fragmented tools that aren't keeping up, and we'll talk about why the current tech stack is failing and what's needed to close that gap. So finally, we will then touch on how those challenges are being addressed through unified innovation, which will then set up Smith to take it from there. But first, let's talk about some of the numbers. So, yeah. So I'm going to be borrowing from a few reports in particular for this talk from partners and friends of ours within the industry, organizations like Logically, SonicWall, Fortinet. I'll share the links to the reports at the end of my segment. So let's start with volume, because volume is telling us its own story. SonicWall recorded over 6 trillion intrusion attempts in 2024 alone. That's over 36,000 per second. Fortinet also observed a 39% rise in application layer exploit attempts and logically noted a growing trend of public proof concept vulnerabilities being weaponized in under 48 hours. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the adversaries aren't just fast, they're increasingly efficient. Threat actors are automating reconnaissance, exploiting known vulnerabilities, and launching campaigns on a scale and timeline that defenders are often unprepared for. The gap between the exploit availability and the defender readiness is often closing for many organizations in the wrong direction. From my own experience in cybersecurity, I've been in this field for about 15 years. One of the things I've noticed is that defenders are often sort of called upon to justify themselves, their budgets. I mean, who hasn't been asked to sort of, if nothing's going wrong, then why are you here, sort of? And of course, the reason is because you're stopping anything from going wrong. Whereas attackers, especially hackers and ransomware gangs and cartels, people who are the ones who are on the attacking side, are the ones often bringing revenue back into their organization. They're not seen as a cost. So they're given lots of tools, they're given lots of leeway, and that can further exacerbate this sort of arms race that we're often feeling between attackers and defenders. And of course, things like AI are accelerating that too, which we'll get to. So let me just, next slide. There we go. So if you've come to any of these previous sessions, you may have heard me talk about ransomware. Ransomware is, I wouldn't say a favorite, but it's a topic of fascination for me, has been for many years in this industry. And I think ransomware tends to be one of the most straightforward crimes that we see in the cybersecurity world. People really, they hold something that you have and encrypt it, and then they ask you for a ransom back. So it continues to dominate the cybersecurity threat landscape, not just in volume, but in the damages it causes. According to that SonicWall report, it's increased another 26% in 2024. And of course, 2025 is not complete yet. Fortinet saw a 35% increase in targeted ransomware campaigns, with attackers focusing on regional vulnerabilities and infrastructure. So this regionalization makes ransomware harder to detect using one-size-fits-all methods. That's also evolving. What's also evolving is their strategy. Traditional encryption-based ransomware is being replaced, or at least supplemented, by data exfiltration and extortion-first tactics. So groups like Kadakia are increasingly breaching systems, stealing sensitive data, threatening public leaks. The message is pretty clear there. Pay us or your data goes live. And it's not just endpoint systems being targeted anymore. There's cloud repositories, SaaS platforms, and backup infrastructure are all fair game. One thing I've talked about in other talks is how once they have your data, or once they are claiming they have it, they're going to extort you in any means possible. They're going to threaten to go to press for a payment. They're going to threaten to talk to your investors. They're going to talk to anyone they can get you to pay that money. And they're going to focus on urgency. For example, that's one reason why the healthcare sector is often targeted, is because of that sense of urgency, that sense of panic that they want, because they want you to pay as quickly as possible and not think about it too much and not try to find other solutions. And of course, there are other solutions, even though prevention is often the best. And definitely, you don't want to pay the ransom if you have any option not to, because we've found that 80% of organizations that pay once are targeted again soon after for another payment. So you really don't want to get on their list of organizations that are known to pay if you can at all avoid it. This shift means that defenders can no longer just rely on backups, by the way, because those are also being targeted. Once the data is out, it can't be taken back. So what's required is layered defense strategies that include continuous monitoring, behavioral anomaly detection, rapid containment capabilities on-prem and in the cloud. So tools need to detect ransomware-like behavior in motion as far in advance, far to the left as possible. So file encryption spikes, privilege escalation, lateral movement, not just the malware signature. So as ransomware evolves, so much of our ability to outpace it is not just respond to the damages done. We want to get out ahead of it as much as possible. So next slide. And this is, one of the slides I find most interesting. It's not exactly surprising that business email is being compromised more, but how AI is enabling this has been, again, not maybe unexpected, but interesting to see play out in a bad way, obviously. We would rather none of this is happening. But we've sort of known, obviously, for a few years now with the popularization and how generative AI has gone mainstream, that attackers were going to shift. And this is one of the places I think we're seeing the shift sort of most logically and dramatically, which is that email, business email in particular, becomes a vector of increasing attacks. So it remains the number one access vector for a lot of initial compromises, and it's only becoming more difficult. So business email compromise, or BEC, rose by 33% in the past year, according to SonicWall. Nearly 1/3 of all the reported cyber events were BEC attacks, but dramatically from only a 9% 2023. So I can imagine in 2025, we're going to see yet another huge increase. What's changing isn't just the volume, it's the sophistication. Fortinet and others are reporting that attackers are now using generative AI tools to craft these really realistic phishing emails. These messages are personalized, grammatically correct, often indistinguishable from legitimate internal communications. We move beyond the old red flags of misspelling and bad formatting. And by the way, it's kind of scary just how granular they can get. They can look into the particular accents and idioms and ways of speech in small regions by analyzing posts and social media from that area. So not only could they get, your language correct, they could get your regional dialogue or even like slang from your town correct in some levels to make their stories more convincing, even if they don't speak your language themselves, these attackers. So that's something we've always been kind of worried about. And I think we're beginning to see, especially in these business email attacks. So logically highlighted in their report that email remains the preferred initial point for MSPs as well, in particular, because a threat actor compromises one user or tenant, they often gain the ability to move laterally into multiple client environments. These phishing campaigns are also increasingly mimicking identity signals, so spoofing familiar senders, mimicking urgency triggers, and even referencing recent activities to increase trust. So why does this matter? Because traditional email filters aren't designed to parse intent or detect contextual anomalies. So static rule sets can't keep up with this dynamic AI-generated messaging. Defending against this new wave of phishing requires advanced behavioral detections, user interaction tracking, for example, correlation across devices and identities. This is an area where traditional perimeter-based approaches are failing and where defenders need to be smarter and have tools that can stay ahead of sort of the traditional defenses. So this is another spike in focus that we're seeing. Credentials continue to be crown jewels for attackers. Identity-based intrusions continue to rise across every vertical. For example, the Sonic Wall report continues by saying 1.7 billion compromised usernames and passwords, that's billion with a B, were found on the dark web marketplaces. These aren't just theoretical risks. Once these credentials are out, they're often packaged and resold in automated attacks. And that's, of course, if you've been in this industry for any length of time, you know how sophisticated some of these dark web and malware markets can be. So according to Fortinet, 60% of breaches involve credential misuse, whether via brute force, credential stuffing, or lateral movement using these valid logins. What makes this so dangerous is that identity-based attacks are inherently quite stealthy. If an attacker logs in with a real credential, they'll often blend in with legitimate activity unless you're looking for those anomalies. Something that Seceon's quite good at doing. We're also seeing a widespread abuse of RDP, VPNs, cloud federation mechanisms like SAML and OAuth. Many MSPs in particular have complex environments because you have those mixed layers and the identity hygiene is often inconsistent. So one attackers are in with one of your maybe less careful clients. They frequently escalate their privileges across downstream clients in their models, multi-tenant models. So the traditional EDR tools may miss this entirely because it's not malware, it's the misuse of that trust. So as identity becomes a new perimeter, it's not enough to just track who logged in. You also need to know where they logged in from, what devices they used, whether the timing makes sense, and how that behavior compares to their usual patterns. So again, for example, Seceon brings all of that together by analyzing logs and flows in real time, correlating identity data network with network activity to spot that unusual behavior. And by layering in these risk scores and contexts, it becomes possible to flag or stop these threats before they escalate, not just respond after the fact. There we go. So on the much bigger level, you also have nation state actors continuing to operate in the background. They're quiet and targeted and persistent, so advanced persistent threats. Sonic Wall noted a 26% in nation state activity with a focus on critical infrastructure. Fortinet and Logically have detailed campaigns tied to APT41 in their research, Volt Typhoon, Muddy Water, targeting sectors like telecom, energy, and government agencies. But what sets them apart isn't necessarily the attacks themselves, it's their approach. They don't want to be noticed. Their goal is long-term surveillance, not quick wins. That's why they use the living off the land tactics, leveraging built-in systems like PowerShell and WMI to avoid detection. They also go after supply chains and identity infrastructure like SAML tokens or Active Directory misconfigurations to maintain persistence across these environments. So these campaigns don't just affect the big players, especially in regions around the world like India, Africa, and the Middle East. Nation-state groups often test and refine their tools against smaller organizations, especially MSPs and suppliers, before moving upstream. So these threat actors understand that compromise at the edge leads to access at the core. And so defending against this kind of threat requires more than just antivirus or basic logging. You need behavior-based threat detection, identity correlation, long-term telemetry collection. So you need tooling that can see patterns unfolding over a week or even a month, not just react to what's loud and obvious in the moment. And most of all, you need that integration of all that intelligence that links indicators across the cloud, the network, and the endpoints. So. And so one of the fastest growing frontiers is cloud and IoT. These aren't new, obviously, but the pace of adoption, has far outstripped the pace of the secure deployment. So SonicWall reported a 26% jump in IoT malware. Much of it's concentrated in the APAC region, where smart devices are proliferating. Fortinet and becoming much more popular. So Fortinet also noted a 32% increase in misconfigured cloud services being exploited, which is exacerbated by multi-cloud complexity and a lack of standardized control. So what's especially concerning about is how these attackers are chaining these two domains together. Logically reported an increase in lateral movement from compromised IoT devices like smart HVAC systems, sensors, and security cameras into an enterprise's core network. These devices often run outdated firmware, they lack EDR coverage, and they live outside the visibility perimeter of most SOCs. So this is more about than just patching. You have to think about your visibility model itself. So are your IoT assets monitored? Are you correlating cloud access patterns with endpoint activity? Are identity and device trust levels unified across the platforms? Because if not, you might be blind to the entry points that threat actors are actively exploiting. And as defenders, we need strategies that treat cloud and IoT not as separate challenges, but as part of your unified risk surface on that one that demands integrated detection, response, analytics. So this is another part I found really quite interesting, just as somebody who's been in this field for a long time. Sorry, I just want to there we go, which is the regional threat breakdown. So everyone in the world is often in different parts of their own cybersecurity and technology journey. And so you can see some differences in how attackers go after those regions. It's not, what cybersecurity isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. While attackers may use common tactics, local infrastructure, threat actors, incentives, and regulatory environments may vary widely. So the threat ones will too. So in India, and by the way, I don't want to speak on behalf of any of the experts in the room here. It's just this is just kind of what my research dug up. But you've seen a growing trend in mobile-based threats, credential theft, and phishing kits tailored to regional platforms. These observations were surfaced by SonicWall and others, not as blanket assumptions, but just some data points. And maybe this will resonate with some of those of you on the ground, or at least highlight some areas of things to think about. So in North America, where I'm based, ransomware continues to dominate, particularly in healthcare and government, like I mentioned, but that's increasingly coming up in discussions as insider threats. I went to a conference not long ago where I spoke to an FBI agent on the ground and asked what they were most concerned about. An insider threat is really keeping a lot of people up at night. Because whether it's malicious or accidental, they often go undetected for a really long time. They're not as easy to detect with your average tools, insider threats. So there's a lot of programs that are kind of sprouting up around that. And again, you're going to want to detect those anomalies, quite early on as one possible way to get ahead of it. Across Middle East and Africa, we've seen reports of targeted telecom intrusions and APT-driven surveillance operations. So organizations operating in these regions, especially those managing telecoms or infrastructure, persistent threats seem to be prioritizing long-term access over fast disruption. And logically noted a rise in phishing as a service kits targeting organizations in Africa, making it easier for a broader range of actors to launch campaigns that previously required more sophistication, more technical sophistication, that is. And finally, in Latin America, SonicWall noted continued prevalence of exploit kits and abuse of privileged accounts. While some of this might stem from older infrastructure, it's also reflective of broader challenges, which is maintaining secure administrative practices at scale. So the point of surfing these examples is not just to generalize, it's just to offer some context and talk about the conversation, foster the conversation. If anything aligns with what we've covered here, with what you're seeing at work, that might be of interest. If it doesn't, love to hear just your thoughts in general. Ultimately, just understanding these regional threats helps us respond more effectively as together as defenders. So against this backdrop of just all of the threats that we're seeing, there's a widening security gap, which is how tired all the defenders are. This can be one of the more urgent things we're seeing. According to a study by Times, they did a Voice of the SOC analyst report where 71% of analysts said they'd experienced burnout. That's a powerful signal that current workflows aren't always sustainable. So one of the key drivers is manual tasks and alert fatigue. Analysts are overwhelmed with low context alerts across disconnected tools. which makes it hard to focus on what actually matters. This slows down response and increases error rates and drains team morale. So while attackers are accelerating, they're adopting the generative AI and automation to scale phishing and malware generation, lateral movement, and evasion at the pace defenders can't always keep up, matching it manually. So this is why certainly here at Seceon, we really advocate for AI-powered defenses. The attackers are using it. Defenders need to as well. It's not just a nice to have. It's becoming mission critical, not just to deter, but to act faster and reduce these false positives and regain control of that SOC environment. So we're going to shift now a little more towards kind of what the defenders can, what tools are available. We're going to talk a little bit more about how it's being deployed in practice, and we're going to let Smith will be on deck to get more in depth about specifically Seceon. So what we're seeing is basically when we have this rise of volume, this rise of sophistication, and this burnout, the reality that many today's defenders' security operations are overwhelmed by the complexity and fragmentation of their tools. The natural next question is what's actually to be done? Where does meaningful change happen? And this is where we think the first is AI-powered detection, so to correlate these billions of telemetry points across the identity network and endpoint and cloud to spot threats faster and with more accuracy than manual methods could. So a couple of these reports agree that the power of AI is in helping teams focus on what actually matters. And of course, the next stage of that is automation. If every alert is going to require manual reviews, we'll never catch up. So Sonic Wall in their report also highlights the impact of automated responses from isolating endpoints to revoking access tokens. So that allows organizations to contain incidents without burning out their teams. So finally, there's consolidation. So security doesn't feel like it's just stitching together a bunch of different puzzles or 10 different tools. You need like a unified platform. Now we'll put everything in one place and in under one pane of glass. So that brings us to Seceon. I think everything we've discussed, the need for speed and clarity and resilience is directly aligned with our platform. Obviously, I think I'm obviously a fan of it. So I'm going to pass the mic now to Smith, who will speak more specifically to how Seceon is addressing these challenges. So as I promised, sorry, I just wanted to, for a moment, show these sources. And of course, you can follow us on LinkedIn where you can give any feedback or if you have any questions for us there. So let's see. I'm going to stop my share so that Smith can take over.
All right. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate it. Yeah. So let's see this.
And of course, you may have seen the poll. So while Smith's getting set up, we would love your feedback on that.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. So thank you. So let's see. Okay. Are you guys able to see my screen?
I can see it, Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Maggie. So I think if you heard what Maggie was talking about, there is a huge amount of burnout that you've seen. And many times it's considered as alert fatigue. There are a number of things. The attackers are non-stop attacking. And somebody had put a question about the Iran-US war that's going on and the wars that have been going on prior to that, like the India-Pakistan, the Ukraine war is going on and so on type of thing, the Israel-Iran. All that stuff is actually increasing the cyber warfare significantly, even though it isn't picking up much of the news. It's just a fact. Now, that obviously adds to the burnout that we were talking about earlier, that Maggie was referring to. So what do we do to make sure that that is at least addressed to a certain degree? So when we started to build the platform, we made sure that this type of challenges had to be addressed right from the get-go. So innovation is effectively in the Seceon team's DNA. So if you look at it, we built the platform with machine learning AI as a foundation. We always made sure it's a big, fast data architecture, and you probably heard Sunny talk about that as well. This is really important because near real-time response is what is needed. Near real-time detection is what's needed to ensure that the volume of alerts that or the volume of work that we are dealing with is minimized. And to make sure it's a comprehensive and not just from the detection, but remediation part as well. It has to be near real time. The automation should be part of the system. The everything should come out as a part of the platform and very minimal additional things one needs to do so that you can stay focused on addressing issues as opposed to doing a lot of research and all that stuff on the security side. Human intervention should be minimal. This is really important aspect because that's where the burnout occurs. Uh, we wanted to make sure that given the nature of the business that we all deal with, people work from home, people work from office, people are connected through VPN, people are not connected, but they're still working. They're connected to just the internet. So all of that should be supported. And that's part of the approach that we go through. The compliance, as we talked about earlier, is continuous compliance and not just the static compliance. The use case that we support are has to be broad spectrum in the sense that it's not like, hey, I am catching one particular malware or one particular ransomware. It has to catch the spectrum of ransomware. So class of threat called malware, class of threat called ransomware, and that's what we do. And because of that, we are able to address not only uh, the attacks that are already known, but even the unknown attacks we can address as well because of the model being the behavior based of the attacker. And we wanted to make sure it's a proactive and preventive approach, which is what we saw earlier when I was presenting. And 360-degree meaning that you want to cover all aspect of it, which is what we covered earlier as well, that the offensive, defensive, endpoints, network, vulnerability assessment, threat intelligence, everything is covered. Okay. And all of that as a part of a single platform helps you optimize and reduces the burnout that we're talking about. Now, let's focus today on just one thing called the CLOP ransomware. That will be our focus today. Now, when you talk about ransomware, what comes to our mind? We think about encryption. That's what is going on, right? But that is not the only thing. We also think about a ransom note that we'll get, and we know that they are going to ask for the money. But ransomware is much more than that. If you look at it, the attackers have actually evolved from this definition of ransomware quite a bit. They actually are doing data exfiltration. So in addition to trying to get money, they are trying to hold you captive so that they can keep asking for more and more money time and time again. So they are taking the data from you as well. They're publishing them in dark web and other places to kind of increase their revenue stream. They are also going through the multiple approach. So the extortion that they are doing is not just a single fold, it's a multi-fold extortion. Okay. And what are those other extortions that they are talking about? Those extortions include DDoS attack. Okay, that's another one. They make sure that your reputation is hugely impacted, not because of you announcing that, but they are trying to do all kinds of other auxiliary activities to impact your reputation as well by publishing that, hey, this security for this guys is not good and so on type of thing. They actually employ some of the people who are going to do the trading in the market and shorting your stocks, to ensure that your actual valuation goes down as well. So there are a lot of extortion techniques that they use, and they use all of that to get more and more ransom from you. So what can you do to help in such situation? So how do you counter such attacks? If you look at the NIST framework, you will see this is the framework, right? It includes govern, recover, identify, protect, detect, respond, all those things, right? But in addition to this framework, which is the process-based framework that you need to be able to identify, you need to be able to protect, you need to be able to detect, you need to obviously govern, you need to be able to respond, you need to be able to recover. But it should include the protection against all types of attacks. It should also be very proactive so that before things become big, it is detected and protected. The automation should be built into it, but automation is not just in terms of detection, but also in terms of containment should be included. All the phases of attack cycle should be covered. So if for some reason you miss in the proactive side, it should cover the other aspect of it as well. Uh, the regulatory compliance, the automation for the full governance should be there. But most important part is to remember that cybersecurity is a game theory problem. So all this ransomware attack that we are talking about is a game theory problem. As you can see, they are trying to stay ahead of you. You need to stay ahead of the attacker. Okay. Always consider that with all the things that you do, breach might still happen, and you need to be able to detect it as early as possible, and you need to minimize the chance of being breached or being subject to the significant damage. You need to reduce it tremendously, right? So you need to be prepared in case the breach is going to occur. Okay, obviously you have to use all kinds of compliance from the regulatory perspective and non-regulatory perspective. You need to have a good posture. You need to make sure all of that is managed on a continuous basis and use a single platform so that the everybody is able to see those things very, very quickly, and the response is going to be fastest with the built-in automation. So let's talk about the CLOP one. Okay, so these are the other names for them. Sometimes they'll call it CL0P or CLOP or TF505, but it's not a ransomware. It's a gang or the ransomware group. Okay, what do they do? It's a they are providing service to other attackers, and it's the most active group among all the groups. If you look at it relatively speaking, over a year-long period, they have grown from 150 from single digit number of attacks to 150 plus attacks. That means they've grown close to 15 to 20 times. If you compare to the other such gangs like Akira and Ransom Up and all of them, they have maybe grown double. So they have like, the single digits, they just became a double digit, low double digits. Whereas these guys have gone 20-fold, 15 to 20-fold. So you can see that this is a really, really important group to keep a close eye on. Okay. They are using many, many malware types and methods, right? Many of them were mentioned by Maggie. SD-bot, the web shell that they use. They use the TrueBot as a downloader. They have RAT, all that stuff that they do. Okay. But more importantly, they are also viewed by the threat tracker community as a trendsetter for what new malware types that I'm going to use. So this is a really, really important gang or group to be watching out for. Okay, and you will see a lot of things that is common among this, right? You will find that no matter what different types of things that they do, they still have to follow the classical sequence to gain access, because without doing all those things, they cannot really propagate the attack and really get the appropriate ransom that they are looking for. And you will hear a lot about it. If you visit CISA, the US's Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency, there are a number of articles on that. And you'll find the similar other government agencies where you'll get a lot of details about this particular group. Please read through that. It is really, really important to see what all different moves that it has, and you need to be protecting yourself against this, right? If you get attacked by this, you might get a ransom note, and you would see something like this. Hey, hello, this is Cloud Panzer group and a hacker group and blah, 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 blah. I've basically X'd out or redacted some of the other things, but this is the type of note that you are expected to get if this particular ransomware is or gang is going to attack you, or the attacker is attacking you using this particular gang's ransomware as a service. Okay. Now let's look at it how to protect. So first and foremost, right? How do you stand? Where do you stand from the attacker's viewpoint? Are they going to attack you or other people? They are always doing uh, recon in terms of the what type of likelihood is there for them to succeed at your particular infrastructure. Okay, so they'll look at what is your rank from the attacker perspective. Are you an easy target? Are you a difficult target? Is your security getting better and better over time? If that is the case, then you are going to catch me very quickly. So all those things are an important aspect that the attacker looks for. So that is an attacker's viewpoint. You can use the product like the Score 360 that we have to offer, and that type of thing will help you significantly. So you can see the benchmark in a quantifiable fashion on the left side here. Okay. Now, this particular aspect of 669 that you are seeing here, right? It has like four categories: poor, fair, good, and excellent. So easier targets from the attacker's perspective is if your score is in the poor to fair range. Not that they get to see the score, but if you see that as a score, you can bet your bottom dollars that yes, attackers is likely seeing you exactly same way as well. Okay. If you're in a good to excellent, as you move to the right, you would find that the attackers are also seeing you as a difficult target, and they are not going to spend time on you because they want to get the return quick, and that's an important aspect for them. Okay, improving of this is an upward trend. If you see on the right chart, if the score is improving, that means that you are doing it's an upward trend. That means you are improving from the security perspective. Okay, and if it's a downward trend, then you are ignoring the security posture. Okay. Furthermore, you should assess and reduce the risk. If you see that the information about your organization is available in the breaches which are widely popular, like Apollo breach and also on type of thing, that means that there is more exposure that you have. Okay, the entities like users or hosts or whatever are over at the in the dark website, you would find that the uh, uh, more areas, more places where you can find those entities from your infrastructure. That means that those people are going to be the best entities or the users that they will use to gain the initial access and so on type of thing. So this type of information from your side is important to know to figure out what type of corrective action that you need to take. For example, if you find that a particular user is widely known in the dark web community or the attacker community, you want to make sure that you disable that user, change the credentials, give MFA to this user and so on type of thing to ensure that you are well protected. That's an important aspect. If you find that that user is involved in one of the breaches, which was very widely popular, then you want to do the similar thing for that user as well. So this is an example of how do you assess and reduce the risk, right? Risky users are going to allow the attacker to gain the network access, and the prevalent breaches, if they are bigger breaches, that means that you are widely known, and that also will increase your chances of being attacked. Okay, we have many more KPIs in this posture, so look through all of them to ensure that you are protected from the attacker's perspective. Now, how do you do the protective detection in the real-time containment? So MITRE metrics in general is a good framework because you know that it talks about the variety of attack patterns that people follow through, and the attack progression is really important. Is it slow or is it fast? Okay, so if you look at this particular attack pattern, you would see that on the 8th or 9th of December, the red line that is going up tells you that the attack is likely happening here, but you can see that the actual script execution, the exploit and all that are actually being deployed much later, right? Anywhere from 6 to 20 days later. What does it tell you? That the attack is a slow moving attack, right? You really want to handle this at the very early stage. And how do you go about doing that? So given that the MITRE boxes are lit up on the top in the red color, you want to address this very early on the left side of the attack framework. Okay. If you see that if the attack goes on longer, the lot of boxes are lit up post detection. That means that the response time is not very good. Okay. So you need to have the real time response, and it has to be almost instantaneous. So how do you go about doing that? In this particular case, it's a relatively slow progression of the attack here you see, and the response is very poor. And you can see that many more exploits are being used to progress this attack. You don't want to be in these shoes at all. What you really want to do is the proactive detection. That means that that particular line is where you want to contain the threat. Okay, and how do you contain the threat? You want to say, okay, block this attacker in its footstep right away. And once you stop it, then all the things that is happening post that would not be happening, and you'd be protected a lot better in a proactive basis. This is exactly what you want to see happen. Okay, this can be done manually like this, or you can automate that through the playbooks and auto remediation. And this is an important aspect that you need to really, really do. Okay. Now, from the comprehensive cybersecurity perspective, you want to make sure that the telemetry that you get are all this type of telemetry. There are flows, there are logs, there are from all these different types of sources, cloud activities, all of that should be there. Okay. So in just all helpful telemetry, there should be no compromises. It should include traffic, you should get TI, you should get device log, you should get XDR, you get vulnerability assessment, everything should be there. That's an important aspect. Okay. The next thing that you want to do here is that all these things you need to be able to correlate. So if you look at this, you want to take the machine learning correlation, network data correlation, the EDR, the vulnerability assessment, host level information, your application level information, all of that should be correlated. Okay. And that is how you're going to get the threat detection much earlier on a proactive basis. This is an important aspect of it. Now, let's assume that with all those things, because of variety of reasons, inaction or whatever, it actually led to breach. Okay. This is where the PMAX that we're talking about comes into play. So you can see here that this ransomware, which was originated by a malware, is actually being quarantined by the PMAX. Okay. And that is exactly what the system is going to do. That it will help you in the proactive detection, proactive containment, but for a variety of reasons, it goes through, it will still protect you using the PMAX. And that is the reason behind why you need to have the advanced platform that I was talking about. Okay. In this case, the attack is stopped in its track as soon as it arrives so that it doesn't spread anywhere. The data leak that it could have been doing is protected in real time. Even the privacy related information that it tries to access is detected, it's contained, it's reported, and even the file integrity is managed, that the files are not being compromised and become a malware. So all of that is actually being done in near real time with the PMAX. And this is an important aspect that you need to understand, that in case you have a breach, you should still be protected, and you should still be protected with the machine learning AI and in near real time. That's the idea behind that. And that's what this PMAX is. And you can see that the PMAX has similar type of dashboards and everything else that we talked about. Okay. Now let's see what does PMAX does for you. It covers all of the endpoints. It's a single platform. And I wanted to remind you that if you do the side-by-side comparison, you would find this is one of the industry's best. Okay, in the sense that the things that others are not able to detect and contain, we are going to detect and contain. And we are going to provide additional functionality and features in the same platform. This is where you get ahead of the attacker. And it is all centrally managed with the immediate action. And you can get better than that. Now, in summary, if you look at it, uh, you know, I would suggest that think about what you should not be subscribing to. I kind of summarize that as a traditional approach because that's what you'd find that the many people talk about. So you need to be, if you find that the proactive risk management is not included in any product that you use, do not go with that. If you find that the security practices that you follow are not evolving rapidly, they are stagnant, you want to really wake up and say, hey, why are we not changing? World is evolving. The attackers are evolving. The incident response has to be really fast. If you find that you are spending a lot of time analyzing, your response time is impacted, you need to change the model that you are using, the method you are using. Manual analysis have to be curtailed, it has to be eliminated, and as much as possible, it should be fully automated. I know that many times many organizations say that, hey, we are doing audits, we are doing compliance, so we should be safe. Your focus should not be audit only. I'm not saying don't do audits. I'm saying that that should not be the only way that you can justify that what we are doing is good. The context should always be there. If you don't have a context of what you are detecting and why you are detecting and what it was before this, you are actually losing the battle before you even start to fight. There are many people say that if I don't see many alerts, my security system is not working. That is not the case. Use the parallel of, the most managers who are good are not really doing as much activity. They don't look very busy. You don't want to be looking busy to say that you are doing a good job. A well-oiled machine is always a good machine, as opposed to the machine that requires a constant fixing. Okay, that's what you want to be in the mode. Okay, make sure that your telemetry is not limited because of your budget. Whatever approach you take, you want to be able to give all the telemetry to the security solution without any constraints. Okay, and so on. And I can go on, but you understand what I'm trying to say. So the idea is to substitute the state-of-the-art defense, and that's what we are talking about today. And you would see this diagram and this particular approach over and over again. And I hope you understand why we are preaching this. We want to protect you all and in general help us all grow from the revenue perspective and put the security on the back burner because your approach is the best one. That's the idea behind this. Okay. With that, I'm done. Back to you, Maggie.